So this is a video that I've been wanting to do for a very long time, and it is my top 5 movies that I love but critics did not like. I mean, hey, you can't agree with the critics on every movie. Now before we start the list with number 5, I just want to make a very brief disclaimer. These are 5 movies that I love and the critics did not like. So if you agree with me, that's fine. However, if you don't agree with me, that is also fine. As long as we can respect our opinions, we're all good. So let's get right into it. These are my top 5 movies that I love but critics didn't like. So let's start the list with number 5. And number 5 is Austin Powers, The Spy Who Shagged Me. Now, I love the Austin Powers movies. I love the first one. I love the second one. The third one I think is fine, but the first 2 Austin Powers movies are great. I feel like critics were way too harsh towards this movie. Like, they're way too picky towards it. I mean, yes, Spy Who Shagged Me and all the other Austin Powers movies are very stupid. And yes, they're very juvenile, but that is the point of them. They're self-aware of themselves, like the first Dumb and Dumber movie. They're stupid, but they know they are. That is the point of them. Do I think Spy Who Shagged Me is just as good as the first Austin Powers movie? Not quite, but I still think it's very, very funny. And I think it's one of the better comedy sequels out there. And it also introduced some of my favorite characters in the Austin Powers movies, like Fat Bastard and Mini-Me. And speaking of Mini-Me, the actor who played him died over the weekend. Rest in peace. He was so funny. He was so talented. He will truly be missed. Let's move on to number 4. And number 4 is Billy Madison. As much as I love Billy Madison, I can see why some critics don't like it. Like, for example, it's stupid, it's juvenile, the story doesn't make any sense. The villain is really, really weak. He's basically just this corrupt businessman jerk. I'll even admit that the villain wasn't that great, to be honest. And yes, Adam Sandler plays this adult kid. And yes, he has the annoying voice. But other than that, Billy Madison is one of the funniest movies of all time. But I don't think Billy Madison is Adam Sandler's best movie. I like Happy Gilmore and Punch Drunk Love better. But I still think Billy Madison is hilarious. And whether you like it or not, you still gotta admit Adam Sandler does a great job playing this, like, annoying adult who acts like this kid. It just, yes, he's very annoying, but he's still hilarious as that role. Let's move on to number 3. And number 3 is Chaplin. This is one of those movies that I'm actually really surprised critics didn't like. I think Chaplin is an excellent movie, and I think most people do. I think Chaplin is a very, very fascinating biopic. So it's basically about Charlie Chaplin and like how he became the famous actor who we all know. And Robert Downey Jr., Iron Man himself, plays Charlie Chaplin, and he gives a great performance. This is one of the best performances I've ever seen him in. And even though we all imagine Charlie Chaplin as this great actor, I mean, he was a great actor. He was in some of the best movies of all time. But a lot of people may not know this, but if you've seen Chaplin, you know exactly what I'm talking about. But he basically had this dark side of him, and he had an actually really sad life. This is one of those movies that I absolutely disagree with the critics on. I think Chaplin is one of the most underrated movies of all time. It is not only a great biopic, but it is a great movie, period. Let's move on to number 2. And number 2 is The Passion of the Christ. Just like with Chaplin, this is another movie that I absolutely 100% disagree with the critics on. In my opinion, The Passion of the Christ is a phenomenal masterpiece. So what makes it a great movie? Well, it is accurate to the crucifixion of Jesus. Yes, it's very graphic, and it's very, very violent and brutal. But that is the point of it. It's about the crucifixion of Jesus. Do you really expect a movie about that to be happy and lighthearted? No, that is not the point of it. This is not one of those movies where you expect happiness in. You don't see like puppies and rainbows and people frolicking in the flower field. No, it is a movie about the crucifixion of Jesus. That is the point of it. Critics bashed it for no specific and valid reason whatsoever. Mel Gibson did an incredible job directing this movie, and Jim Caviezel did a phenomenal job playing Jesus. In fact, I think he should have been nominated for Best Actor. Alright, it's that time. Let's move on to number 1. And the number 1 movie I love but critics didn't like is The Sandlot. The Sandlot was a movie that I grew up with. I loved it. In fact, when I was little, every summer, my family would go to my cousin's lake house in Lake Freeman, which is in Indiana, and we would always watch The Sandlot. I love The Sandlot. In fact, if The Sandlot never came out, I would not be here. The Sandlot was one of those first movies that I saw that made me appreciate cinema. The fact that the critics didn't like Sandlot when it first came out back in 1993 is proof that they're way too picky. Like, I don't get it. It actually confuses me. What makes The Sandlot a great movie is it has heart. All the kids in the movie, yes, they do say rude insults to each other, but that doesn't take away from the fact that they have great chemistry together, and they're all really good friends, and they all care for each other. It's a movie that has heart. So, do you want to know how much I love The Sandlot? Well, I'm gonna say it. I think it's better than every movie in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. That's how much I love it. Alright guys, that's a wrap for my top 5 movies that I love but critics didn't like. So, I have a question for you guys. What are some movies that you love but critics weren't a fan of? Whatever they are, just comment below. And if you want to see more of my videos, just be sure to subscribe.